It's thinking about it. Okay, I think this is it. We're live. Okay.
Live.
Welcome to our book launch. Oh, do we have a real book we could have shown instead of the ARC? To the Stradivarius by, I'm completely ready for this, by Rae Knowles. It's out today, and we're very excited. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and introduce everybody on the guests, all of our guests, and then we'll dig in. Ready?
Sounds good.
Rae, we're going to start with you. Hit it.
All right. Well, I'm Rae Knowles, and I wrote the book. I'm based in South Florida, and I don't know. I have a wife and 2 cats and 2 dogs and 1 kid and a lot going on, but really excited to be here. It's been a really exciting day.
All right, Zach, you next.
All right, I am Zach Rosenberg. I am also based out of South Florida. In fact, Rae and I are really good friends, and we live pretty close by together. I am the author of the soon-to-be-released in 2 weeks, Hunger's as Old as This Land, a Jewish LGBT horror Western, also from Brigand's Gate. And I am just thrilled to be here. I think Rae is just incredible, and I love supporting her, so I am so happy for her on her big release.
Thank you.
Oh, was it my turn? I don't know.
It's your turn, Sadie. Go for it.
Hi, I am Sadie Hartman, Mother Horror. I am the co-owner of the subscription company Nightworms. I also have a book coming out this summer called 101 Horror Books to Read Before You're Murdered. And I'm here to celebrate Rae's book because it's amazing and I love Rae and I love this book. And we're excited that it's born today.
Thank you so much, Sadie.
Of course.
Okay. So next up, Chloe.
Hi, my name is Chloe Gold. I'm a horror writer based in New York. My latest story is coming out soon in the first issue of Ghoulish Tales, so I'm very excited about that. Rae is also in it. Yeah, I'm currently working on my own debut novel.
All right, Kat, now it's up to you.
Hi, I'm Kat. I'm currently in Ohio, but I move a lot. I have 6 cats and am fostering, so that's fun. I'm a horror writer. My debut, Revenge Arc, is coming out August 1st of the summer. I'm so excited to be here. I was so honored to be invited to this. I read the Stradivarius earlier this year, and it's been like top and center in my mind. I've been recommending it to people, and I'm so excited that it's finally out. I'm excited the people I recommended it to can buy it finally.
Thank you so much.
Okay, guys, I forgot to tell you before we started to mute while you're not talking so we can cut back on some of the background feedback. So we're Heather and Steve of Brigand's Gate Press, and we're thrilled to publish the book, and we're very excited when we got it. So usually how we kick these off is we're a 3-person team that decides on what we take, and we all 3 have to agree to vote you on or off the island. And so it can be a long process, but usually I decide based on when I hear my mother start reading the book out loud to me. So when we grew up, my mother read to us well into our teen years and read us everything under the sun. And we were merciless, horrible children. Like, she would have strep throat and croak through chapter after chapter. So for me, I often greenlight before we get to the end of a manuscript, because as soon as I hear my mother reading it, I know it's something that I want to publish. So I'm going to start with the one that did it for me, and it's pretty early on in the book, and it's short. So here we go. William's eyes trailed down the wraparound porch, alive with plants, to the surrounding manicured garden beds, to the rock between them carved with May's name. And it was then that the full breadth of tonight's crime struck Williams. All this, he thought, all this for a violin. And so, okay, I think Brett's got here. So that was when I was sold. And so I knew, hi, Brett, I'm glad you made it. So that was when I greenlit the book. And then, of course, I finish it. So then Clyde has made me start to defend with second and third passages through the book. And so I've got those marked in the book too.
Yeah.
But
well, ever since one of the books we published, one of the very first long pieces, she read the very first sentence and goes, "Yep, we're publishing this." And I'm like, "Okay, you haven't even read the whole first chapter."
Right. I was smitten. I'm one of those people. I generally don't know by the first line what I want, but sometimes you do. But so anyway, so that was the passage that kind of hooked me into the whole story. Yeah. So let's talk about that. Let's introduce Brett. Yeah. Brett, take a few minutes, introduce yourself.
Yeah, I'm sorry about that. I didn't think about the fact that I was using a work computer, so I was using my work laptop, and nope, we're not doing this. So I had to run into my husband's office. I'm using a Mac, which I've never touched before, but we got it. My name is Brett Mitchell-Kent. I am a horror author and illustrator, and I have the pleasure of co-hosting the Cutthroat Queens podcast.
Excellent. Welcome. So let's start with whether or not you have a favorite part of the book. Try not to give away a spoiler. But if you've got a favorite part, or the part where you're like, okay, I'm going to have to read this to the end now. There's going to be no putting it down. Zach, you want to go first? Sadie, you want to go first? Go.
Yeah, I'm a big Ollie fan. So Ollie's my favorite character, and I just wanted to read this one portion. This wasn't where I was hooked, obviously, because it's later on in the book, but this is what made my heart light glow a little bit. So it says, Ollie's amateur sleuth heart sang. They floated through the rest of the day, preoccupied with picking out their most noir outfit, landing on a duster jacket and a thrift store fedora that both made Ollie feel like an old-timey detective and obscured their vision. I think that's so fucking cute. Like, I love Ollie to death, and any time that they were on scene was my favorite parts in the book.
Thank you so much. Oh my God. I think I loved Ollie so much that I hope it sort of poured through on the page. And I just have to say, this is so emotional hearing everyone's favorite parts. This is so nice. I love this. Thank you.
You're gonna make me cry. This is fun.
Yeah. It's only a good launch if somebody cries and the cats show up, right? So
yes.
Who wants to go next?
Happily. And let me just say, Rae, you've earned it, so enjoy it. But I don't want to spoil too much. But I think probably my favorite part, just to read like a very brief bit, was it was just a presumption, really, but it felt like the truth, as true as the screaming violin and Lady Spectre. I love you less than I used to. That was really, I don't want to give too much away about context, but like midway through the book. Honestly, I was loving it more or less from the start, and that's no shock because I love Rae's writing all the time. But that was like the part where it, took it from great to transcendent in a sense. Like there's just, and also I will totally agree with Sadie that I absolutely freaking adore Ollie. They are an amazing character. They are just fantastic. But I really do love May. I think May was my favorite character in the book, and I love how much really you imbued May with, how much depth and hidden strength there, and just what a great character she was. But yeah, awesomely done.
Thank you so much, Zach. Is it okay? Can I say something about that line? Can I interrupt our flow? So I'm so happy that resonated with you, and happy to hear that you liked May. I have to be transparent and say that May was really hard to write at times because a lot of this story was inspired by my own experience when I was younger in an emotionally abusive relationship like this. And I just remember so distinctly the moments of feeling that this person visibly loved me less. And it was the most uncanny feeling that made me question if there was any real emotion there at all. So I'm just really pleased to hear that it came through on the page, because it was at times like hard to write, because I would like cringe at May because I was like cringing at, you know, the way I reacted and, you know, my own regrets and stuff. But that's really cool to hear. Thank you. And my wife is here. Do you want to say hi to Kristen?
Hello.
Hi.
It's a big day.
Yes, it is.
Okay, who wants to go next, talking about favorite parts or favorite characters, or both?
I will.
All right, Chloe.
All right, yeah. So I loved this, and I think my favorite part isn't a specific passage, but it's the overall journey that the reader gets to go through, seeing the exact and precise methodology of the antagonist, and the way that he's doing. I don't want to give anything away. The way that he's doing what he's doing to May, and I think Rae captured that just so perfectly. And the fact that it was methodical and he got it down to an exact science. It was horrifying. It was so scary. And yeah, Rae just did that so perfectly. There's also another just very small part in it that I adored. Carter misgenders Ollie. He uses, I think, she, her pronouns, and May corrects him on that, saying they, them. And it's such a small moment, but I loved it. I thought it was so wonderful.
Thank you so much, Chloe.
I can go next. So that was one of the things that I was going to mention too. I liked how casually it was corrected, and it just showed that you can correct the people that you love in a non-confrontational way. And it was nice to have it casually listed there. As for my favorite character, I think that I am going to go with the more obvious choice. In May was just an incredible character. I think that the way that she faced the adversity and how strong she was despite all of the suffering in her life was very well done. My favorite part is one that I don't want to give too much on, but I think everybody that's read it will understand that there was a point where I guess she found her strength again, and her shift and the way that you wrote her, you know, coming back from the brink of where she could have been broken. It was a hit for me. I could tell that there was some pain in the writing, and I think I reached out to you kind of to ask that when I was reading it, because it was just so raw and vivid. And that was it was an empowering moment, because you can come back from it.
Yeah. Oh, this is just really emotional. I'm sweating.
It's such a good book. Go, Kat, go.
It is. So I have stuff to say that's already been said. I think I was hooked in the prologue. All this for violin, like, it's been coming up a lot, but that's such a good line. And that was where I knew that I wanted to keep reading. My favorite part is, I have a very specific favorite moment, but it is very spoiler heavy. And I think everyone who's read it is going to know the moment, though, when I reveal that my favorite character was Eva. I really loved the character depth that you brought to everyone, even the characters that weren't like protagonists, even the characters that weren't traditionally likable, I felt just had these really deep personal moments and a lot of depth. And so she was my favorite. Learning about her was my favorite moment, and that's something that you brought to life so well in this book.
Thank you, Kat. And I think I reached out to you. You were one of the first reviews, and you mentioned what is my favorite, well, one of my favorite scenes in the book, which is the rocking chair scene. And I was just so over the moon to see that you enjoyed that scene in your review, because that was one of my favorite scenes. And that's all I'll say about it, because I don't want to give anything away. But
right, no spoilers.
Connection.
I think one of the really great parts of this book is the character development that goes into the different characters, because you feel like you know them. Like early on when they hit the page, it's like you know them. Sometimes, you read a book and you got to unpack your characters. And I think that's fine. I mean, I'll read all sorts of books, but I loved how, one of the things that I love about some books is how sad you are when it's over.
Yes.
Like you don't want to leave those characters behind. And so I really feel like I wish I could say this out loud better. I really feel like the thing about May is that there's a huge amount of unpacking and character development in the arc. Like you just get to know more and more about her resilience and her fear. And it's tangible in so many places. And it really struck me as, I don't know, you could meet May at a coffee shop. You read books, and there are some books that are phenomenal books, but you're like, but probably I couldn't meet that person at a coffee shop, but I feel that way. And also I feel that way about Ollie. I feel like Ollie could be my neighbor, and you would just exchange pleasantries while outside doing yard work and just get to know them more and more. So I think that's one of the, besides the story and plot line, I think one of the things that's really enjoyable about the books is the character development and how easy it is. It doesn't really hit you over the head. You just get to know them, right. And you suddenly feel like you've always known them. So I really enjoyed that part of the book, I think. So, Rae, is there anything you want to talk about? A favorite part while you were writing it, or the part that, this is always my favorite question, the part that you were like, this may not make it to the book. If this doesn't settle itself out, this is getting cut.
Oh God. Well, I almost wrote a totally different ending. And I don't want to spoil what the ending actually turned out to be. But I almost wrote what I thought was a much more realistic and much darker ending, but I ultimately couldn't do it to the characters that I'd fallen so in love with. So, maybe I'll keep that to myself for a while longer. But I'm so thrilled to hear you say that you felt like you knew the characters right away, or, could tell that they were fully formed right away. And thank you, Thea. I see the comments from everyone coming in, and it's adding to my armpit sweat in a good way. Because I think the hardest part to write of this book was the beginning. I can't tell you how many times I rewrote the beginning of this book. I write a lot of short stories, and when I do my characters in my short stories, I feel like I know them instantly, and I feel like I can drop people into who they are instantly. And that was so not the case with this book. I really had to get to know them through writing, and then I found I would have to go back to the beginning and rewrite now that I knew them better. So I think I really struggled with just rewrites in the beginning more than anything. But by the time I got to the end, I feel like they had their own ideas and, their own motivations, and we were chugging along.
Yeah, I agree. That's interesting. I hadn't really thought about, I'm not a writer. I'm just a reader, like it's psycho levels reader. But I never thought about how when you get to know your characters better as your story goes through, how you may have to go back and change the voice or change something that they were doing early on to match who they've become in your writing process. That's really interesting. Mm-hmm. Okay, so writers, what do you think? Have you had to go back and change different parts of the book as you got to know your characters more? Somebody go first. That's really interesting.
It happens. I've been through that once or twice. Especially when I don't outline. When I don't outline, I usually have to rewrite, like the first half of the.
Yeah, the same for me. Sometimes I'll discover a quirk that they likely would have done the entire time, and I'll have to go back and try to pinpoint where I can add that so it's not so abrupt. It's really fun discovering the characters as they evolve for you.
Yeah, sometimes that happens. Usually, sometimes I'll go back and I'll flesh something out, or change something around. So I mean, I completely concur with Brett there. It's a real joy discovering characters as you're writing them.
So I have a question then. So when you write, are you an outliner, or do you just fly by the seat of your pants? What do they call that? Is that called pantser? A pantser? Yeah. Which do you prefer, or do you do both? I actually talked to an author the other day who's like, it depends on what I'm writing. I was like, what? All right, so sound off. Somebody start.
I'm happy to start. I really want to be an outliner, and I made this like beautiful outline for the Stradivarius on like paper with like color coded Post-its, and I like did all the things, and then they just do whatever they want. It just never works out. And anytime I try to outline what I think is going to be the climax of the story, ends up being like way earlier, and then I have to like read. So I think I'm just a through and through pantser, to be honest. I aspire to be an outliner one day.
Zach, what about you?
I am a pantser all the way. I will go in with ideas of what I want. I will have scenes in my head and stuff I want to make happen, but I will just sit down and let the words flow, and then I will smooth it out later. That has just always been my general approach to it.
Sadie, I want to know about you. Do you carefully outline stuff, or do you just kind of like, let's see what happens today?
Well, so I write fiction. I have written, or nonfiction. I have written some short stories just for fun. And I think that authors are wizards. Like, I don't know how you guys do this. I'm a reader, and I love reading. And I think that I've tried to write fiction, and it just kind of the length of time it takes to do that just pulled me out of reading too much. So, one animal won over the other, like I had two wolves and I picked the reader. But for writing reviews, I just write the way that I talk. And so generally what I'll do is I'll call up my mom and I'll fangirl over a book to her. And then I can hear myself say those things when I'm writing like a review, or I'm writing something about, books or whatever. I just hear my own voice in my head as I was saying those things to my mom. And it feels more conversational that way, because I like to imagine the audience that I'm talking to when I write. So it's a little bit different for me. I don't outline anything. I just kind of jump right in and go. But yeah, having talked about the book previously with someone helps me to formulate the ideas. And sometimes I'll even read like bad reviews just so I can have like a fake argument in my head, so that I have those good talking points for my review. And I think that actually like fiction writers would probably do well to read their dialogue out loud. I think it's a game changer. I've been reading my reviews out loud before I hit publish, just to make sure that everything sounds legit, like how people would really sound if they were saying it, versus like, phoning it in on a conversation between two people, which I will say Rae's dialogue is totally authentic in almost like a cinematic way. Like, I read very cinematically, the movie's playing in my brain and the words just kind of fade away. And I can just see the whole thing going. So yeah, the characters in this are very vivid and real, and interact with each other in a very authentic way. Do you read your dialogue out loud, Rae? Just curious.
I do. So yeah, absolutely. I'll actually read, entire passages out loud, even non-dialogue, just to see how it flows. I tend to overcomplicate my sentences. So if I like stutter over it, trying to read it out loud, I know I need to like calm it down, like break up the sentence.
Yeah, right.
All right, Chloe, how about you? Outliner, pantser, both?
I've done both. With short fiction, it's usually just flying by the seat of my pants. And the story that I have coming out, I wrote the first draft in just a fit of rage, honestly. Yeah, it's about abortion and body horror with that. And so, just raging out, just typing furiously, scaring my cats. And so I've done that, but with my current project that I'm working on, I needed an outline. I tried writing just, freestyle, and then I think midway through the first page, I was like, no, I need to write, A goes to B and therefore C. But I think there are, benefits to doing both.
And myself. How about you, Kat?
So my first job, like the first job I ever had, was ghostwriting, and because you have to do works in progress, I had to learn very quickly how to outline and stick to that outline. And while I had that job, I learned that I liked outlining. I thought it was fun. It was like kind of like a jigsaw puzzle, and it made my drafts a lot cleaner. And now that I don't ghostwrite anymore, I have quit doing that. Because I like the exploration. I like getting to learn more organically, like who my characters are and where it's going, but it adds a lot of steps to the process. It like doubles my revision time. But I'm back to being a pantser. So
Okay, Brett, you're up.
Yeah, so I am kind of a mix between the two. I do plot out my beats. I go chapter by chapter, I guess, and determine what I want to happen emotionally, not specifically, because I can't stick to it. It changes every time I try. So I need to hit specific things at specific points, and that's how I plot it out. But as for how the story evolves, that changes every single time I sit at my computer, so I can't really plan. If I had to stick to a strict outline, I probably wouldn't get anything done.
It makes me think about, have you guys ever written or read a story where it ended so differently than where you thought it was going? And like, I'm just thinking from a writing point of view. I know it's so many people in the comments have been, yeah, my characters like have their own lives, do their own thing. Is that common? Like when you're writing and you're just like, well, that ended much differently than I thought it would. I hope that's fine. It's interesting to me. Like that writing process is interesting to me. So I know, Rae, you had a different ending option for this one, but is there another point in the book where you're like, well, okay, I guess that's going to happen here?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I am obsessed with the 1944 film Gaslight, and that final scene. I mean, come on. I've seen it. I can't even tell you how many times. It's on YouTube if anyone's interested and wants to check it out with Ingrid Bergman. So I knew we had to get there because, I mean, I wrote the whole book to retell that scene, if we're being honest. So, I knew we had to get there, but yeah, I mean, like I said, there was a very final note after that I thought about doing differently, but I'll say less for the Stradivarius and more for Merciless Waters, which is the novella I have coming out in November that I'm really excited about. I had no clue how this book was going to end. And I did not outline a single lick for this thing and got all the way through it. And I'm a person who really likes a bittersweet ending. I don't want it all happily ever after. I don't want it all tragedy either. So I knew I wanted to strike a balance there. I really like to give the characters exactly what they deserve. And because I tend to write really morally great characters. Exactly what they deserve, at least in my mind, tends to kind of straddle the line, like a little of both. So I'm really happy with what I ultimately came up with for the ending, but I think it like came as I was writing the scene. I don't think I had really much forethought at all about how exactly it would play out.
Does anybody else want to comment about something you were writing where you were like, oh, okay, I guess we'll do it that way? Sure.
Really quick though, I did want to just talk about Gaslight really quick. So I grew up watching old black and white movies with my mom. Like I watched, like Laura and Gaslight and Casablanca and just like all of the movies. And I honestly think that it's a lost art. Like we don't make movies like that anymore where like a light is shining in on a character's face while they're talking and the mood is so moody. And it's interesting that I didn't know that Rae wrote this book structured around that movie. And while I was reading, I kept going, this is like Gaslight. Like, and then later when you guys were rolling out like the synopsis and like talking about it and talking about the movie, I had blurbed it using Gaslight, thinking I was so clever in like referring to the book as Gaslight. And here it's like a whole thing, but I was like, this is the coolest thing ever, and everyone should watch the movie and everyone should read this book because the way to structure a mystery around those old classic movies, like you have to have your shit together because those things are like fireworks on screen. And Rae, I props to you for structuring a mystery that felt like that had those vibes.
Thank you so much. And that's hysterical, Sadie. I figured when I saw your blurb, you obviously knew in my mind. That is so funny. Well, I guess I pulled it off then. I feel really good about that.
Yeah, no, you totally nailed it.
I'm so glad you brought that up because I had actually read your reviews, Sadie, and I was like, there is that part of my brain that's like, did she know that it was based off of Gaslight when she wrote this?
No, I didn't put it together. If I did read it, I didn't put it together. Oh well.
I wonder how many people are going to watch that now. I wonder if they'll see an upsurge in.
I hope everybody watches that. I hope everybody watches it. Ingrid Bergman is like amazing in the movie. I think even like a young Angela Lansbury is in it, isn't she? She plays like the maid.
Yeah. Absolutely. She plays the maid, and I'm pretty sure you can stream it for free. At least you could. Last I looked on like one of those really random streaming services, but absolutely. And so fun. So I dropped lots of little hints throughout the Stradivarius. I'm curious if other people picked up on it. So Alquist Ave. Alquist was a name, I believe, of the aunt in Gaslight. Her last name. And Lady Paula is sort of a revision on Paula. My brain fizzled out for a second. But the main character, Ingrid Bergman's character in Gaslight's name is Paula. So I went with Lady Paula for the violin. But yeah, everyone should watch the old Gaslight. It's amazing.
Oh, yeah. I mean, especially since everybody uses the phrase like about gaslighting and everything. Like we need to know our origin stories, like this is one of those origin stories that everybody has to know where that came from,
Totally. And that, that's what made me seek out the movie Gaslight was, so, just a little backstory is back in the day when I was in this relationship that kind of inspired the writing of this book. Gaslighting was not really part of the common vernacular at the time, and I could not figure out what was happening around me, and it was very confusing to me. So I did all these like internet deep dives to try to figure out like what is going on, and came up with the term gaslighting. And it's obviously very common now, but it wasn't at the time. And then looked in, where did that come from? Oh, gaslight. Okay. So yeah, I'm hoping to reintroduce some folks to the origin of that word now that it gets thrown around sort of left and right these days.
I had never seen the movie or even heard of the movie. And my grandmother and I had watched anything Cary Grant did for sure. but like the black and white movies were something that there was a theater here when I was younger. And on Sundays, the first show of the day was an old black and white movie, and you could go for like $1 or $1.25. And then during the summer, the Fine Arts Theater always did a series where every 10 days they would change the movie. But Rae was like, well, like Gaslight. And I was like, what are you talking about? And she's like, the movie Gaslight? And I was like, no, hold on. And she's like, you have to watch the movie. And but I was so surprised when I watched the movie because, Sadie, I think you're right. There's so much atmosphere in those old movies. And there's such, like, the thing that always strikes me is not just the dialogue in the movies, but the silence between different characters. And sometimes the silence in a scene tells you more than the dialogue in the scene lets on, and just how the directors would capture expressions in people's eyes, and they'd put the shadow on like half their face, or you would just see their eyes in a shadow. Like there was so much artistry in it. And it's the same kind of feeling you get in this book. Like there's a scene, I don't want to give it away because it's got a spoiler, but there's a scene where it definitely makes me think of that shadow work in the cinematography of old black and white films. And I think, I mean, we're spoiled with color because you can do a lot with color, but boy, did they have to work hard to get some of the really big feelings in a film out in black and white just by using light. So yeah, I forgot what we were talking about before we got sidetracked by Gaslight. So if anybody remembers and they wanted to add something to it, please do. What were we talking about? Anything? You got it?
You were talking about writing different endings for.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, scenes that where you're like, oh, okay, interesting. But oh look, I should have known Caroline's strong rules about how those stories were told. Oh yeah. Yeah. Power of vulnerability. Oh, that's good. Did you want to say something?
I know.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead. So did somebody else want to say, where you're writing and characters take a leap to the left or the right, or something goes completely different than how you anticipated it going? Anybody?
Yeah, I actually just finished up a draft on a novel, and it ended up taking me in a sharp turn, and one of the characters that I just really bonded with, I had to let her go, and I hadn't planned for it, so it was a little bit emotional on me because I didn't want for her to die, I guess, you just say it bluntly in the book. But the way that the ending ended up, kind of had to let her go. So it's always really surprising where our brains take us when we're actually getting it out on the pages.
Yeah, when you're in the process. Anybody else?
For me, it's usually one of two things. Like I'll either start with the end, I'll be like, this is a great end scene, and then I'll work backwards, or I'll be totally surprised somewhere in the middle and I kind of veer off. My debut that's coming out, I, for the first time, had no idea where where it was going. How I wanted it to end, and I didn't really come across it along the way. I stopped. I was like, okay, we're done now. And then while I was revising, it's like, okay, I'm gonna aim some stuff in this direction so that it doesn't feel as abrupt. But it was just like I wrote until I was done, and then it's like, yeah, that's where we're at.
That's interesting. I hadn't thought about that. I'm just done writing now. It's pretty good. Anybody else? I can't even remember who's spoken yet. I'm thinking about the movie again. So I want to talk a minute about reviews, because somebody mentioned, reading the reviews. Sadie, I think it was you when you talked about reading reviews to think about counter arguments against reviews you had read. And I think one of the most interesting thing about reviews, and of course I'm talking about this from a publisher standpoint, not an author standpoint at all, because I sign my name to birthday cards and that's what I author. But, as a publisher, to me, the bad review is the one that's just like sucked. And I'm like, no, why did you think it sucked? Like, because the things you thought sucked may be what sells the book to me. I want to know why you didn't like the book or what didn't work for you. And my husband says it's because I have a contrary nature, but I have a tendency sometimes when I'm searching for a book, which does happen less now that we're running a press, but when I'm just like in the world reading reviews, I have been known to buy books that get a lot of 1 and 2 star reviews because people did not like the content. And they were, they were like, here's what I didn't like about it. I didn't like the content for these reasons. And I'm like, oh, my people, I found my people. And so, we always try to tell our authors, don't read your reviews. Just don't do it. Just don't do it. Like, you're going to make yourself crazy. You're going to cry. And you're just going to have like this roller coaster ride of, that was a fantastic review. Yay. And, oh God, I feel like I've just been gutted and left in the street kind of review. And so, I have a tendency to say, listen, find your circle of people and ask them to write about it and tell you what they think about it. And those are the people. And I just want you to like repeat it to yourself. Like, don't get on Amazon and read all the reviews. Don't do it. Now, so far we have had 0 authors do that. 0. We were all review readers. But I think the thing that I love is I don't mind it when somebody gives it less stars than I would have, as long as they explain why. Because I think sometimes the why sells a book to the people who are looking for something that you didn't like. And my favorite was, it was actually a romance novel, and they were like, it was completely unbelievable to me that these 2 ended up instead of these 2. And I was like, oh, I want to know why that was unbelievable. And I literally spent $7.99 on the book just to find out why they were so like, I can't believe this group became a couple and not this couple.
Right.
And I did not agree with them by the end, but it is amazing to me the contrary things that will make me buy a book. And I'm wondering, before you just say anything, how many other people here buy things based on contrary reviews?
Well, Heather has often bought a book because a review said too risque, and she's like, "Oh no."
I will buy it if that's you're like, too risque for me. Oh well, put it in the cart.
So I actually seek out poor reviews because I am just of the firm mind that all horror is valid, and there are just some pieces of horror that people hate and will, bomb with reviews, and those authors are still authors. They're still putting their soul into their work. So I, more often than not, will read the negative reviews to sell me the story.
Yeah,
I'm the same way. If someone tells me that a book traumatized them or they had to put it down, I'm like, this is my next book.
My people. I have a tendency, and here's the thing, I do read the good reviews because I want to see why they loved it, because maybe we love it for the same reason, or maybe you've loved it and I'm gonna be like, oh, I don't love that. But I have a tendency to start with the bad ones and then read the good ones. And because I like to end on a positive note.
Yes.
But I like to read them all. I have been known sometimes to he'll be like, are we going to turn the light off? And I'm like, I just need to read 10 more reviews. And he's like, but then we're going to turn the light off. And I'm like, well, then I'm going to decide if we buy the book. And I don't know if we have to start reading it tonight or we're going to go to bed. It's hard to say. But I love all sorts of reviews, I guess. Yeah. I think reviews are important for a variety of reasons, but most important to the people like me who stay up late at night reading reviews.
So what about the rest of you? Do y'all like to read reviews for your own things, or do you avoid them because you don't want to get disheartened, maybe?
Not just your work, but any work. Like if you're searching for.
Well, I mean, I write them, but I'm trying to restructure the expectation of like the word review. I think that what most readers are doing on Goodreads and Amazon is just responding to what they read and just sharing an experience. They're not necessarily reviewing it or critiquing it or, so like if you do run across a review that's just like, this book sucked, that's a valid response, I feel like, because it's like, what, you know, we do that with music too. Like if we're watching a movie or listening to music, I'll be like, I hate this song. Like I'm not going to give a dissertation on why I hate it. I just don't like it. And so I feel like if we kind of restructure and reformat, then it just kind of takes the weight off of the reader to formulate a longer or better opinion by what we think is a good opinion, you know, a good way to write it. And then it also creates like a distance between the reader and the author in the way the author doesn't have to carry that as a review, you know, like just saying that this sucked, that doesn't feel complete, because it's not, it's just a response. And so I feel like the reviews are the ones that the reader spends a lot of time talking, like you were saying, spends a lot of time talking about what worked for them and what didn't. And then that's what sells other readers because they enjoy those experiences. So I always think it's fun at the bottom of a review to be like, hey, this wasn't my cup of tea, but here's like 5 reasons that I think other readers might enjoy this because it had this element in it, and this. Because every book has an audience, like Brett was saying. All horror is valid. People can see themselves in a variety of different things. You know, your least favorite book is going to have 1-star reviews and 5-star reviews. And your favorite book, I mean, fucking like classics that people are just like, this book is the gold standard. Someone's going to shit on it. So it's like, you know, that's just my opinion.
Yeah,
totally. That's really true. Yeah, totally.
I think it's Gabino Iglesias does his intermittent tweets of 1-star reviews of his favorite books, and I get such a kick out of them because they're always like these huge classics, and someone's like 1 star, hated it, like to like keep it in perspective. But to answer your question, Heather, I would love again to be someone that just didn't worry about the reviews, but I'm like so type A. I can't, you know, keep myself out of there for better or worse. But I'm happily, you know, I've had very kind, generous reviews, and hopefully I'll learn and grow out of that and eventually just leave that alone. But as my anxiety stands right now, I'm refreshing Goodreads daily.
Yeah, I think that sums it up really well. I probably like, you know, I kind of do like to read I do like to read reviews when I'm starting something off, you know, even if it's not for me. I've gotten to stuff from negative reviews before too. I mean, I've actually gotten to plenty from negative reviews. Sometimes I will read my own reviews just because, like, oh, how can I resist? And they're all saying such nice things. And like Rae said, I'm totally type A on that front, but hopefully I'll grow out of that.
So I've only been in anthologies. I think my book just hit Goodreads. And I've not looked it up. I don't even know. I'm behind because I do worry about reviews. I worry that like once I go down that rabbit hole, I'll stress about it. But and I don't usually read reviews before I buy a book. Sometimes I'll stumble across reviews and immediately buy the book, but like I don't go seeking reviews before I've bought something because I like to go in as blind as possible. But when I leave reviews for books, I do try to be like, here's what I liked, here's what I didn't like, because I have very specific and strange tastes. So there are a lot of things that I'm looking for that I don't think would sell a book to anyone else. And then I try to be really careful when I do find books that are, you know, like deeply upsetting to be like, hey, I liked it, but it was for these reasons. So, you know, be warned going in. And those are the reviews that help me to buy books. So those are the kinds that I try to leave.
I'm personally such a terrible reviewer. Like I always refer to myself as like the biggest fangirl hype man because I just love everything and I love it so much that I'm really unreliable. I love it. So don't listen to me because I love everything and I have weird taste.
I love people like that, actually. I'm that way too.
Yeah.
Well, something. So one thing I wanted to mention, and we've talked earlier in this launch about favorite characters from the book or passages, but one thing I really enjoy about Rae's writing is just her description, the way she does stuff with that. And I've read books where they're trying to describe the scene on the street, what everything looks like, and 5 or 6 pages in, you're still reading the description of this, and that bugs me sometimes. It's like, come on, get to the point. And I think Rae does a really wonderful job of giving the imagery without belaboring it, forever. And I'm going to read.
I was going to say, he's about to read something. I can feel it in the buildup. I can feel it in the buildup.
And I love some of her wording here. And this is one of the sentences that really sold me on the book and her writing ability. And it's from chapter 6. In the yard below, she spotted Ollie's vibrant hair, a clementine spot amongst the pale green grasses. And I love that sentence.
Yeah.
And that's one thing that sells me on writing. If I really get a love for the way you word things. And
yeah. You're going to read something else?
Yes.
It's about to turn into a reading session.
It's very quick. But so she said, she's describing the way things are here. And it's like, autumn had settled upon Landrum, chilly breezes rattled dormant trees, spreading leaves of orange and brown and yellow through the quiet streets. They twirled in packs like tumbleweed. And I love that. It sets a scene, and it doesn't take 10 pages to do it. It's right there, and it's powerful.
Yeah, it sets a mood quickly, I think.
So I really appreciate you as a writer.
Well, we're going to be mindful of everybody's time.
Yes.
We're so glad that you guys were willing to come on and guest panel for the launch party. So let's wrap up with 2 things. What you're reading now, and make sure that you promote yourself before you go. Like, tell us what you've got coming out. Tell us what you're working on. And Rae, I'm going to have you start.
So I just finished Stephanie Parent's The Briars, which was excellent. I think I read it in like a day and a half. Such a talented writer. The prose was incredible and the story was haunting. And as far as promotion, well, we have a secret, so more to come on that. But I have, obviously, the Stradivarius is out today. Yay! And then in November, Merciless Waters is coming out. I'm like extra excited because it's like very sapphic and kind of sexy. And I'm super excited about that. And we also have our open call right now for our sapphic villains anthology, Scissor Sisters. And I've already gotten amazing submissions. So that's all the things. Thank you.
All right. And obviously, I have also read The Briars, and I will also say that it is amazing. I just finished a whole host of books today. T.J. Price's The Disappearance of Tom Nero earlier, which is from Spooky House Press and is also terrific. I'm currently making my way through Brian Evanson's work, which is fantastic. I just finished Collapse of Horses. I am moving on to The Open Curtain. I'm just working my way through the bibliography. I am always reading just so much stuff, so it's all kind of, I'll figure it out later. But to promote myself right now, I also, like I said earlier, I also have my first debut is coming out. The Hunger is as Old as This Land, which is like I said, my Jewish horror Western coming out in just about 2 weeks from today, actually, which is awesome. And then a month later, I have my Jewish detective pulp horror, The Long Shalom, out from Off Limits Press. So if everyone likes fun noir and awesome cosmic horror that reads like you take Raymond Chandler and P. Jelly Clark's Ring Shout and Laird Barron's The Croning and blend them all together and make it like Jewish and awesome, then absolutely hit me up for that. And lastly, this is probably going to be at the end of this year, but I have my Jewish pirate horror that I'm describing as The Vigil meets Evil Dead meets Black Sails, which is coming out from Darklit Press.
Oh my gosh, I'm excited for all of those things. I love your comps. Yeah, so I am reading this stack. I like to go through and do like short stories in between novels that I'm finishing. I just finished Nathan Ballingrud's The Strange, which was chef's kiss. It's kind of like True Grit on Mars. And I am reading Stephen Graham Jones' short story collection, After All the People Lights Have Gone Off, which is a rarity. Nobody has it. It's like out of print now, and nobody knows why it's not coming back because it's fucking amazing. And I'm also reading the children, or it's called Children of, it's called the Grave, it's called, I have the worst at titles. It's called Graveyard of Lost Children. There you go. And it's really creepy. It has sort of like the bent neck lady in it, but it reminds me of that. So it's kind of like not what I want to be reading at night, but I keep doing it anyway. And I have, like I said, my book, my first book ever, 101 horror books to read before you're murdered, coming out August 8th. I'm going to be on like little mini tours. I'm going to tour with Keith Rawson here in Washington. We're going to hit up Powell's in Oregon, and we're also going to be at Elliott Bay Book Company in Seattle. And I'll be in San Diego at BoucherCon. And yeah, just kind of freaking out in my mind and silently screaming, but also just being like, yeah, this is normal life.
I'm currently reading Lycanthia, or The Children of Wolves by Tanith Lee. It's out of print. I got it from Thrift Books, and just you have to read it. You have to read everything by Tanith Lee. She's one of my favorite authors of all time. Just everything that she has written has just been such a slam dunk. And I'm also reading another Tanith Lee book called Red as Blood, or Tales from the Sisters Grimmer. And I just started it. I'm just reading these two simultaneously because why not? But it seems like retellings of classic fairy tales, which I'm all about. I'm obsessed with fairy tales. Self-plugging. Working on 3 projects simultaneously. The first is a debut novel that I have outlined. Everything is outlined. So I've been working on that, and also working on sort of a sapphic splatterpunk psychological thriller, which I'm very excited about. And the other thing is a screenplay.
Am I allowed to swear? I've made it almost through an entire appearance without but I'm reading
Do it.
I'm reading Fluffy Fucking Bunnies right now by by David Youngquist, and I'm really enjoying it. I'm really close to the end, actually. I am probably going to go back when this wraps up because I have like 2 little chapters left. But as for self-promotion, I am the co-host of the Slasher Radio podcast. I have my debut book, Revenge Arc, coming out August 1st. It is an epistolary horror thriller. And yeah, that's pretty much it. I'm working on some stuff. I'm currently working with 12 other authors to do an Exquisite Corpse style novella collaboration. Matt Wildison just turned in like our first chapter, and it looks amazing. It's called Zombacon, and notices to that will probably be coming up soon.
Yes, so I am very, very near to the end of Ling Huan by Ai Jiang, and I've loved it so far. I'm very close to the end for that one. And then I'm also making it through La Petite Morte, which also has Rae in it, edited by Evelyn Freeling. I have been loving that one. I was lucky enough to read a lot of the stories that, made it into their the actual getting accepted. So it's really fun to see what happened with those. As for self-promotion, I have a couple of shorts coming out. I think with Chalices with Erie River, and the Unleashed with Star Watcher Press, and then so Cutthroat Queens podcast. If you want to hear about all things indie horror, that's our focus. We love indie horror, and we try to take in as honest look as possible with somebody like me who just loves everything. So
Great.
That's excellent. What about you?
Well, I'm actually right now, my nighttime reading as I'm going to bed is a book I've probably read 20 or 30 times in my life now, and I'm starting it again. It's The Stand by Stephen King. I have to read that like every 2 years.
Yeah.
So it's time. I'm also starting this new book that several people recommended to me. It's called Moon of the Crusted Snow by Wildgeshig Rice. Yeah. And it just sounded really awesome. It's an apocalyptic story that's in a small town further north, and just how they're adapting to everything changing and ending around them. And I'm really looking forward to getting to that one. So
that's the one we just got from the library, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, so what I'm reading now is mostly submissions because I fell behind when my grandmother got sick. But I am. So I've read this. I have a tendency, if I really like a book, I read it several times. And like I read it once and I don't mark it up. And then the second time I go through and mark it up and bend all the pages and spill coffee on it. And then the third time I go through and I crack the spine, I have to retype pages in. I mean, like listen, this is why we have 2 copies of every book Steve likes, because we have a his and hers version. And you can tell mine aren't even allowed to live on the shelf with Steve's. He's afraid they'll contaminate his books in some way.
Yeah. Let me just say something there, because one of her first things, testing out a book, I've got to make sure this is well put together. And she'll take the spine and wrap it around. I'm like, oh my Lord, what are you doing? It's like, you're never allowed to touch my books. Yeah.
We have an author who was like, I want to play with, was it Amazon? Will you test out the hardcover?
Yeah.
And
she tested it.
And Steve's like, I know exactly how to test this. Send us a copy. Let's give it to my wife and see if it holds up. So, but it's by Stephanie Parent, and it's her book of poetry, and it's called Every Poem a Potion and Every Song a Spell. And it is to die for. It's all about fairy tales, and it is amazing. And I am a little bit of a poetry whore, I will admit, but this one is delicious. And this one, I mean, you can see it's not very thick, but I took several months to read it because I torture myself all the time, and sometimes would only let myself read a poem like every other week. But it is divine. It is divine. And if you think you don't like poetry and you liked The Briars, I highly recommend that you give it a try, because it's totally different storytelling model, but it's that kind of language that kind of makes you ache inside. Yeah. So it's really, really good. Really, really good. Yeah. I'm not going to go on and on about poetry. Right. We'll eat dinner. Okay.
So final question here for Rae, and this just gives you a chance. Is there anything you'd like to say to your readers, to your fans out there as we get ready to end the broadcast?
Oh my God, just thank you. That's all I want to say. I'm so moved, especially thank you all for joining as guests today. I love all of you, and I'm just emotional and sweaty, and thank you. This has been so beautiful.
Thank you guys so much for taking some time out of your day to join us to help celebrate Rae's launch. We really appreciate it, and everybody who tuned in to see it and who will catch it in the rewind next, or whatever it's called, later.
Right.
Yeah, not live. So it'll be up on our YouTube channel, and it'll be on our Facebook page if you weren't able to catch it live. So we'll share it around. We'll share the link on Twitter. But thank you guys. We appreciate it. Congratulations.